1000, and trust me, you're going to be real grateful for that mattress by the time we're done. So congratulations, you just woke up in the year 1000 in Newfoundland. The first thing that hits you is the cold. Even though it's supposed to be this medieval warm period, it's still Newfoundland in October, and your breath makes little clouds in the dim light filtering through the smoke hole above. You're lying on a built-in wooden bench that runs along the wall of a long, low building. Beneath you, a thick sheepskin provides some cushion against the hard wood, and a heavy woolen blanket, slightly scratchy but wonderfully warm, covers your body. The air smells like wood smoke and wet wool, animal grease, the earthy scent of turf walls, and underneath it all, the salt tang of the ocean, which is never far away on this windswept peninsula. You shift slightly. The sheepskin rustles beneath you. Better, much better. Your bed is basically a wooden platform built right into the wall of this long house. It's not just you. There are similar sleeping benches all along both walls where other members of your Norse expedition are still sleeping, some snoring softly, others shifting and turning under their own woolen covers. The longhouse itself is a marvel of practical engineering. Timber frame, but the walls are thick blocks of turf, basically chunks of earth and grass roots stacked like bricks. Keeps the wind out mostly. The roof curves overhead like an upside-down ship hull. Because honestly, the same guys who built your longships built this place, and they know their way around wood. In the centre of the long room, the hearth fire burns low, just glowing coals now, banked with ash to keep them alive through the night. No flames, but enough warmth to keep the worst of the cold at bay. The smoke drifts upward, finding its way through a hole in the roof peak. Most of it, anyway. Enough smoke stays inside to make your eyes water sometimes. You're getting more comfortable now. Your muscles relaxing into the familiar routine of waking up in this strange new land. It's been 3 months since Thorfinn Karlsefni's expedition landed here, 3 months since you sailed from Greenland with 160 other Norse settlers, bringing cattle and sheep and everything needed to establish a real colony, not just a quick raid or trading visit. This was supposed to be permanent. The sound of wind whistles through the turf walls. Outside, you can hear the waves against the rocky shore. The settlement sits on a rise overlooking a protected bay, perfect for beaching the longships. But this morning, something else catches your ear. Voices, low, urgent conversation from the far end of the longhouse. You prop yourself up on one elbow, the wool blanket sliding down. The air hits your shoulders and you pull it back up. Even inside, even with the fire, it's cold enough that you don't want to give up any warmth. Down at the far end, near where the animals are penned, you can see 2 figures silhouetted against the glow of the banked fire. Thorfinn himself, recognizable by his height and the way he carries himself, and beside him, Snorri, his wife Gudrid's brother. They're talking in hushed tones, but in the still air of the longhouse, sound carries. They came back again last night, Snorri is saying. Took more iron, 3 knife blades and the small axe head. You settle back against the sheepskin, listening. This has been happening for weeks now. The Skraelings, that's what everyone calls the native people here, they've been taking things. Not exactly stealing, more like selective borrowing. They seem fascinated by anything made of metal. Any sign of them? Thorfinn asks. Footprints around the boat sheds, but they're careful, always gone before dawn. A comfortable sigh escapes you as you sink deeper into your bedding. The conversation continues, but your mind starts to wander. You know this story doesn't end well. You can feel it in the way people have been getting more nervous, more watchful. But right now, wrapped in wool and sheepskin, listening to the familiar sounds of your people waking up slowly around you, there's something almost peaceful about this moment. The first successful European settlement in North America. That's what the sagas will call this place when they write about it decades from now, though successful might be too strong a word. See, here's the thing about the Vikings that most people don't really get. They weren't just raiders and warriors. Most of them were farmers, practical people who knew how to make a living in harsh places. Eric the Red, Thorfinn's predecessor, he'd already figured out how to survive in Greenland, which, let me tell you, is not exactly prime real estate. But this place, Vinland, they're calling it, though you're not sure why since there aren't any grapes growing here, this place seemed like it could actually work. Good fishing, timber everywhere, which is like gold when you come from Greenland, where trees are basically mythical creatures. And the land, once you get away from the coast, has enough grass to support livestock. You stretch a bit, feeling that pleasant heaviness that comes with lying still and warm. Your breathing naturally slows in and out. The problem, and you're starting to understand this even though nobody talks about it directly, is the people who were already here, the Skraelings. They were here first. Obviously, we're talking about people whose ancestors had been living in North America for something like 12,000 years. The land the Vikings think of as empty, as free for the taking, has been home to countless generations. And these people, they're not what the Vikings expected. When your people first spotted them 3 weeks into the settlement, the reaction was, well, mixed. Some of the Norse were fascinated, others were immediately suspicious, and a few were frankly terrified. See, the Vikings have met other peoples before. Irish monks, Slavic traders, even some Sami reindeer herders up north. But this was different. Everything about these people was unfamiliar. Their appearance, their tools, their boats, their way of moving through the landscape. They appeared suddenly one morning, 9 of them, sleeping under overturned skin boats on the beach, just there like they'd materialized out of the mist. That's when things got complicated. You roll onto your side, finding that perfect position as the memory plays out in your mind. The wool blanket settles around you, nice and easy. Thorvald Eriksson, Leif's brother, he'd been here first, 2 years ago, and according to the stories that filtered back to Greenland, Thorvald's encounter with the Skraelings had gone poorly. Very poorly. The way Thorvald's surviving crew told it, they'd come across those 9 natives sleeping under their boats, and instead of trying to make contact, instead of seeing what these people wanted or needed, instead of even just leaving them alone, well, Thorvald decided to kill 8 of them. Just like that, attacked sleeping people who posed no immediate threat, killed them and let one escape. You shift again, getting more comfortable, but the story still makes you uneasy. Even for Vikings, who aren't exactly known for their pacifist tendencies, this seemed excessive, brutal, unnecessary, and predictably, it backfired. The one who escaped came back with reinforcements, lots of reinforcements. With their skin boats and their bows and arrows, they surrounded Thorvald's longship and let loose. Thorvald himself took an arrow to the chest. Fatal shot. He died right there on the beach of this new land, victim of his own poor decision-making. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The mighty Viking warrior killed because he couldn't be bothered to try talking first. His crew stayed another winter, probably because they didn't have much choice, and then sailed back to Greenland with stories of hostile natives and a dead leader. You'd think that would have been the end of it. You'd think the Norse would have decided that maybe this particular land wasn't worth the trouble, but here you are. Because Thorfinn Karlsefni heard those stories and thought, I can do better. He's a trader, not a warrior. He understands that sometimes you can get more with cooperation than with violence, sometimes. So when Thorfinn put together this expedition, he came prepared for actual settlement. Families, not just fighting men. Livestock. Tools for farming and building. Everything needed to establish a permanent presence, and for the first 2 months it actually seemed to work. The The Skraelings showed up again, cautious but curious, and this time, instead of attacking them, Thorfinn tried something revolutionary. Trading. It started small. They would appear at the edge of the settlement, these people with their dark hair and skin clothes carrying bundles of furs. Beautiful furs. Fox and beaver and caribou worked soft as silk. Your people had red cloth, wool dyed bright crimson, and milk, fresh milk from the cattle you'd brought from Greenland. The natives had never seen anything like either one. The red cloth fascinated them completely. They would trade an entire fox pelt for a strip of red wool no bigger than your hand. They seemed to think it had magical properties. And the milk, the first time one of them tasted cow's milk, his face went through about 6 different expressions before settling on wonder. For weeks, this worked perfectly. Peaceful trade, both sides getting what they wanted, the Norse getting furs that would keep them warm through the winter, the Skraelings getting exotic goods they'd never encountered. You can almost feel yourself drifting as you remember those early trading sessions. There was something almost magical about the communication. No shared language, but somehow understanding each other through gestures and demonstrations. The careful respect, the mutual curiosity. You yawn, a long, satisfied sound. Your body is settling deeper into the sheepskin bedding, but the good times, as you've learned, don't last. 3 days ago, everything changed. You were working on repairs to one of the boat sheds when you heard the commotion, shouting from the direction of the cattle pen. Not angry shouting, more like surprise, confusion. By the time you got there, half the settlement was already gathering around the pen, and you could see the problem immediately. One of the bulls had gotten loose. Big bastard, black and white, with horns that could punch through a ship's hull. Somehow he'd broken through the fence and was standing in the middle of the settlement, looking around with that particular expression cattle get when they're not sure if they should be aggressive or just confused. That's when you noticed the Skraelings. A group of them had been approaching the settlement, probably for their usual trading visit, but when they saw this enormous horned beast wandering free, they panicked, and you can't blame them. Think about it from their perspective. They'd never seen cattle before. The biggest land animals in North America were caribou and moose, but this thing, this massive, muscular creature with huge horns and an attitude, this was something from another world. They scattered, dropped their furs, grabbed their weapons and ran for their boats. The bull, spooked by all the sudden movement and shouting, charged. Nobody got hurt. The bull just ran past everyone and disappeared into the woods, but the damage was done. The Skraelings left, fast, and they haven't been back for 3 days. You stretch again, feeling the pleasant weight of exhaustion starting to settle into your limbs. Your breathing is getting slower, deeper. But this morning you can feel something different in the air, a tension that wasn't there before, because yesterday Helgi the lookout spotted boats on the horizon, not just a few, dozens of them, skin boats like the ones the Skraelings use, but more than anyone had ever seen together. They didn't approach yesterday, just sat out there, beyond the mouth of the bay, visible but distant. But now Snorri is talking about footprints around the boat sheds and missing iron. You close your eyes, listening to the conversation continuing at the other end of the longhouse. The voices are getting quieter, more urgent. How many do you think? Thorfinn is asking. Hard to say. Could be 100, could be more. 100 Skraelings, armed with bows and arrows, and probably not happy about the bull incident, or maybe still angry about what happened to their people when Thorvald was here. You pull the woolen blanket higher, up to your chin. The sheepskin beneath you seems softer now, more comfortable. Your muscles are completely relaxed. Here's the thing about being a Viking settler in the year 1000. You wake up every morning not knowing if this is the day everything goes to hell. But you've gotten used to that uncertainty. It's just part of life. What you can't get used to is the sense that you're living through something important, something that's going to be remembered. Whether you succeed or fail here, whether this settlement survives or gets wiped out, the very fact that you made it this far means you've done something nobody in Europe has ever done before. You've crossed the Western Ocean, you've found a new land, you've met people who live completely differently from anyone back home. And somehow, despite all the mistakes and miscommunications and moments of violence, you've managed to survive for 3 months. That's something. Even if it all falls apart tomorrow, even if you end up sailing back to Greenland with your tail between your legs, you'll always know you were part of the first European settlement in North America, 500 years before Columbus was even born. Your eyelids are getting heavy now. The combination of warmth and comfort and the early morning quiet, the distant sound of waves against the shore, the soft crackling of the banked fire, the conversation at the other end of the longhouse has stopped. Thorfinn and Snorri have apparently reached some kind of decision, and now they're moving quietly toward the door, probably going to check the defences, make sure the boats are secure, just in case. You shift one more time, finding that absolutely perfect position. The wool blanket settles around you like a warm embrace. The sheepskin cushions every part of your body that touches the wooden bench. Outside, the wind continues to whistle through the settlement, but inside, wrapped in the familiar smells and sounds of home away from home, you feel that deep, satisfying relaxation that comes with being safe and warm and comfortable. Your breathing slows even more, in through your nose, out through your mouth, each breath carrying away a little more tension. Tomorrow you'll have to deal with whatever the Skraelings have planned. Tomorrow you'll have to figure out whether this settlement can survive the winter, whether the trading relationship can be repaired, whether Thorfinn's dream of a permanent Norse presence in Vinland is possible. But right now, in this moment, you're exactly where you belong. Part of history in the making, settling deeper into your bedding as the longhouse around you slowly comes to life, your body naturally relaxing as the familiar sounds of your people starting another day in this strange new world wash over you like a gentle tide. The morning sun climbs higher, sending shafts of pale light through the smoke hole in the roof. You watch the dust motes dance in the golden beams, feeling that pleasant drowsiness that comes with being perfectly warm while the world outside stays cold and unwelcoming. Around you, the longhouse is fully awake now, people moving quietly, efficiently through their morning routines, the sound of leather boots on packed earth floors, the clink of iron tools, someone banking the fire and adding fresh wood, sending new warmth radiating through the space. You finally push yourself up, the wool blanket sliding away from your shoulders. The cold air hits your chest and you immediately understand why everyone moves so deliberately here. No wasted motion, every action calculated to preserve body heat. Your feet find the floor. Packed earth, worn smooth by months of use. Cold, but not freezing. You pull on your leather boots. Good thick boots with wool lining, because in this climate, cold feet can literally kill you. The morning routine is simple but essential. Check the animals, secure the boats, inventory the weapons, and today, watch the horizon. You step outside and the wind immediately tries to steal your breath. October in Newfoundland is no joke, even during this so-called medieval warm period. The temperature might be a degree or two warmer than usual, but warmer than usual in the North Atlantic doesn't mean comfortable. It means you might survive with adequate preparation. The settlement spreads out before you in the grey morning light. 8 main buildings, all built in the same style as the longhouse where you slept. Timber frames with turf walls, low and solid against the wind. Boat sheds down by the water. Storage buildings. A smithy where the precious iron gets worked into tools and weapons. everything positioned to take advantage of the natural shelter provided by the landscape. The Norse know about wind and weather. They've been dealing with harsh climates for generations. A yawn escapes as you take in the familiar sight, your body still heavy with that comfortable post-sleep feeling. But something's different this morning. People are moving with more purpose than usual. Conversations happen in clusters, voices low and urgent, and everyone, without exception, keeps glancing toward the bay. You follow their gaze and see why. The skin boats are back, not dozens this time, hundreds. They sit just outside the mouth of the bay, a vast flotilla of small craft that seem to appear and disappear as they ride the swells. Each boat carries 2 or 3 figures, dark shapes against the grey water. You've never seen so many Skraelings in one place. Impressive, isn't it? The voice belongs to Bjarni, one of Thorfinn's most trusted men. He's standing a few feet away, also watching the boats. His breath makes small clouds in the cold air. How long have they been there, you ask? Since before dawn. Helgi spotted them when he went to check the fishing nets. You settle beside him, both of you watching this unprecedented gathering. The boats move in loose formation, never coming closer, but never retreating either, waiting. The thing is, you're not entirely surprised this is happening, because the bull incident wasn't really about the bull. Oh, it was the immediate trigger, sure, but the real problem goes deeper. It goes back to something nobody really talks about, but everyone understands. The land. See, the Norse think of Vinland as empty territory, free for the taking. They sailed here, they built their settlement, they started farming and fishing and hunting. In their minds, that makes it theirs. But the Skraelings have been using this land for generations, not living here permanently, necessarily, but this bay, this peninsula, these fishing grounds, they're part of an ancient pattern of seasonal movement. The natives come here in fall to gather certain types of shellfish that are only available at this time of year. They have traditional camping spots, sacred places, and the Norse, without realizing it, built their settlement right on top of some of those places. Your shoulders naturally drop as you consider this. The morning sun feels good on your face, even though the wind is sharp. It's not that the Skraelings are unreasonable. For months, they worked around the Norse presence, found other places to camp, adapted their patterns. But there are limits to how much adaptation any people can do. And then the trading started going wrong. You remember the shift. It was subtle at first. The Skraelings would show up for trading sessions, but instead of the relaxed, curious exchanges of the early days, there was tension, urgency. They started demanding more red cloth for the same furs, more milk, more iron. At the time, the Norse interpreted this as simple greed. These people had gotten a taste of European goods, and now they wanted more. Basic human nature. But looking back, you think it was something else. Desperation. Because the Norse settlement wasn't just taking up space, it was fundamentally changing how this ecosystem worked. The cattle, for instance, they need a lot of grass, and they eat it right down to the roots, in a way that wild caribou don't. After a few months of grazing, the meadows around the settlement started looking different, thinner, less productive. The fishing was affected too. All those nets in the water, the constant boat traffic, the refuse from the settlement, it changed where the fish went, when they showed up, how many you could catch in a given area. Small changes, each one, but they added up. And the Skraelings, who depend on the precise timing and abundance of natural resources to survive, started feeling the pressure. A comfortable sigh escapes you as you watch the distant boats. The whole situation makes sense when you think about it this way. 2 different approaches to living off the land, suddenly forced to share the same space. What do you think they want? Bjarni asks. It's a good question, and honestly you're not sure anyone knows the answer. Maybe they want the Norse to leave, pack up and sail back to Greenland. Maybe they want to renegotiate the terms of sharing this territory, work out some kind of formal agreement about who uses what and when, or maybe they're here to finish what Thorvald started 2 years ago, an eye for an eye, blood for blood. The Norse way of thinking about conflict is pretty straightforward. Someone wrongs you, you hit back harder, keep escalating until one side can't escalate anymore. Then the winner takes everything and the loser takes nothing. But these people might think differently. You've been watching them for months now, and their approach to conflict seems more complex, more strategic. When the bull incident happened, they could have attacked immediately. They had people here, they had weapons, but instead they retreated, regrouped, thought about it. Now they're back with overwhelming numbers, but they're not attacking, they're just waiting, making a point. Thorfinn wants to talk to them, Bjarni says. This surprises you. Talk to them? How? Same way we've been trading, gestures, demonstrations, show them we're not hostile. You consider this. On one hand, it makes sense. Talking is what Thorfinn does. He's a merchant, a negotiator. He's built his whole career on finding ways for different groups to work together profitably. On the other hand, there are several hundred armed natives sitting just outside your bay, and your entire settlement has maybe 60 fighting men. The math is not encouraging. When, you ask? This afternoon. He wants to take one boat, just a small crew, row out far enough to be heard, but not far enough to be surrounded. You nod, though something in your chest tightens at the thought. Brave plan, maybe foolish. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Your breathing settles into a slower rhythm as you watch the distant flotilla. The boats rock gently on the swells, patient as the tide. The morning passes quietly. People go about their usual tasks, but with weapons close at hand. The cattle are kept penned, children stay near the buildings, and every few minutes someone checks the horizon. The Skraelings don't move, don't approach, don't retreat. They just sit there, a reminder that this land was never as empty as it seemed. Around midday, you're helping repair nets when the word comes down. Thorfinn is ready. He's chosen his crew carefully. Himself, obviously, Snorri because he's good with boats and level-headed in a crisis, a man named Ulf who has some skill with the native language, or at least he's picked up more words than most people, and 2 others chosen more for their diplomatic temperament than their fighting skills. 5 men in a small boat rowing out to face several hundred. You watch them prepare, checking oars, making sure the boat is sound. Thorfinn wears his best cloak, the one with silver brooches, because he understands that sometimes appearance matters in negotiations. No weapons visible, though you're sure they have knives hidden somewhere. The boat slides down the beach and into the water with a familiar scraping sound. Oars bite into the dark water, and slowly, steadily they row toward the mouth of the bay, toward the waiting Skraelings. You find yourself holding your breath as the distance closes. Other people have gathered along the shoreline, everyone watching this unprecedented meeting. The flotilla doesn't move as Thorfinn's boat approaches, but you can see activity on the individual boats, people standing up, gesturing to each other, a ripple of communication passing through the group. Then, when Thorfinn's boat is maybe 100 yards out, something changes. 3 of the skin boats detach from the main group. They move forward, cutting through the water with a grace and speed that's genuinely impressive. These people know their watercraft. They position themselves in a loose line between Thorfinn's boat and the rest of the flotilla. Close enough to talk, far enough to escape if things go wrong. You can't hear what's being said from this distance, but you can see the body language. Thorfinn standing in the bow of his boat, arms spread in what you hope is a universal gesture of peaceful intent. One of the Skraelings responding, also standing, also gesturing. The conversation for, if you can call it that, goes on for maybe 20 minutes, and then abruptly it's over. The 3 skin boats turn and paddle back to the main group. Thorfinn's crew begins the row back to shore. even from a distance you can see the tension in how they handle the oars. Quick, efficient strokes, nobody looking back. They beach the boat and Thorfinn climbs out, his face grim. "Well?" someone asks. Thorfinn shakes his head. "They want us gone, off their land, back to wherever we came from." "What did you tell them?" "That we're willing to share, that there's enough here for everyone." "And?" "They disagree." A long silence settles over the group. The implications are clear enough. No negotiation, no compromise, just an ultimatum. Leave or face the consequences. You shift your weight, feeling the familiar weight of uncertainty settle in your stomach, but also, strangely, a kind of relief. At least now everyone knows where they stand. "How long do we have?" someone asks. "They didn't say, but I got the impression it won't be long." Thorfinn looks out at the flotilla, still waiting beyond the bay mouth, then back at the settlement behind him. Months of work, buildings that represent hundreds of hours of labour, livestock that's been carefully transported across an ocean, all of it suddenly very fragile. "We need to decide," he says finally. "Fight or sail." And there it is. The choice that will determine whether this becomes a footnote in history or the beginning of something bigger. You lean against a wooden post, letting your muscles relax as you consider the options. Both have merit, both have risks. Fighting means trying to hold the settlement against overwhelming odds. It means accepting that some people will die, maybe a lot of people. But if you win, if you somehow manage to drive off the Skraelings, then Vinland becomes truly Norse territory, a permanent foothold in the new world. Sailing means abandoning everything you've built here. It means admitting defeat, sailing back to Greenland with stories of failure. But it also means survival, the chance to try again somewhere else, some other time. The debate starts immediately. Voices raised in argument, people taking sides, some wanting to fight, unwilling to give up months of work without a struggle, others pointing out the mathematical reality of the situation. You listen to the arguments, feeling that familiar drowsiness that comes when your body is still but your mind is processing complex information. The sun is warm on your face despite the cold wind. The truth is, the decision isn't really about courage or cowardice. It's about what kind of future the Norse want in this new land. If they fight and win, they establish the precedent that European technology and tactics can overcome native numbers, that this continent can be taken by force. If they sail away, they leave the door open for different kinds of relationships, future expeditions that might approach things differently, maybe find ways to coexist rather than conquer. Of course, there's also the possibility that they fight and lose, in which case the precedent becomes very different. The story becomes a warning about the dangers of underestimating the people who were here first. Your breathing naturally slows as you consider these possibilities, the weight of history settling around this moment like a warm blanket, because whatever happens next, it's going to be remembered, told and retold in the sagas, shaped into legend. The first major conflict between Europeans and Native Americans, win or lose, fight or flee, this afternoon will echo through centuries. But for now, in this moment, there's still uncertainty, still choice, still the possibility that someone will think of a third option that no one has considered yet. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the sun on your eyelids, listening to the ongoing debate, voices passionate but controlled. These are people who understand that decisions made in anger rarely end well. When you open your eyes again, Thorfinn is looking directly at you. "What do you think?" he asks. And suddenly, impossibly, the weight of the decision seems to rest partly on your shoulders. Your voice, your choice about what happens next in this strange new world as the afternoon light grows longer and the distant flotilla continues its patient wait, and your body settles into a comfortable position against the post. Muscles relaxed, breathing steady, preparing for whatever comes next in this story that will shape the future of two worlds. The question hangs in the air like smoke from the longhouse fires. What do you think? Thorfinn's eyes are steady on yours, and you realise that somehow, in this moment, your opinion actually matters. You take a breath. The cold air fills your lungs, sharp and clean. Around you, the other settlers have gone quiet, waiting to hear what you'll say. I think, you say slowly, we need to understand something first. You gesture toward the flotilla, still waiting beyond the bay mouth. Those people out there, they're not here by accident. This isn't just anger about the bull, or even about Thorvald's attack 2 years ago. Thorfinn nods, encouraging you to continue. They're here because we're sitting on their land, and I mean that literally. You point to the ground beneath your feet. This spot where we built the settlement. I've been watching the patterns in the shells and bones we find when we dig. This has been a seasonal camp for them for generations, maybe centuries. Your shoulders naturally drop as you settle into the explanation. The afternoon sun feels good on your back. So from their perspective, we didn't discover empty land. We moved into their backyard. The silence stretches out, people shifting weight from foot to foot, the reality of the situation sinking in. That doesn't change the fact that we're here now, someone says. We've put months of work into this place. No, you agree. It doesn't change that, but it helps explain why talking didn't work. You can't negotiate your way out of fundamentally different ideas about how land ownership works. Thorfinn strokes his beard, thinking. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe this was always going to end this way. Maybe the real question isn't whether we fight or sail. Maybe it's what we learn from this before we leave. The word leave creates another ripple of tension, but you can see some people nodding, understanding the logic. Because we will leave, you continue. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Look at those numbers out there. We can't win a war of attrition against people who know this land better than we do. You lean back against the wooden post, your body settling into a more comfortable position. The wool of your cloak is soft against your neck. But that doesn't mean this was a failure. We've learned things here that no European has ever known about this land, about these people, about what's possible across the Western Ocean. Thorfinn looks out at the flotilla again, then back at the settlement. You can see him working through the implications. How long do you think we could hold out if they decide to attack? Honestly, maybe a day, maybe 2 if we're lucky. You yawn, the stress of the situation starting to make you tired despite the afternoon light. They don't need to take the settlement by storm. They just need to keep us pinned down while they pick off anyone who tries to fish or hunt or gather firewood. Siege tactics. Exactly, and they have all the advantages in a siege. They know where to find food and fresh water. They can resupply from inland. We can't. The conversation is interrupted by a commotion from the direction of the boats. Someone spotted movement in the flotilla. You all turn to look, and sure enough, things are happening out there. The loose formation is tightening up, individual boats moving with more purpose. They're coming closer, someone observes. Not attacking, not yet, but definitely moving into a more aggressive position. The message is clear enough. Decision time. Thorfinn makes up his mind with the kind of decisive speed that made him a successful trader. We pack up, he announces, everything we can carry, livestock, tools, anything valuable that fits in the boats. There's some grumbling, but not much. People understand the math as well as you do. When? Snorri asks. Tonight. Use the darkness to load the ships. Sail at first light. What about the buildings? Someone asks. All that work? Thorfinn shrugs. Buildings don't cross oceans. People do. And with that, the first European settlement in North America begins its end. The rest of the afternoon passes in a blur of organised activity, people selecting what to take and what to leave behind, tools and weapons, obviously. The livestock, cattle and sheep and goats that represent months of careful breeding. Personal possessions, but only the most essential ones. You find yourself involved in dismantling the smithy. The forge itself is too heavy to move, but the iron stock, the finished tools, the specialized equipment, all of that gets carefully packed and loaded. It's strangely peaceful work, your muscles settling into the familiar rhythm of organized labor. Lift, carry, stack, repeat. The kind of tasks that quiet the mind and let you focus on simple, immediate problems. As you work, you keep glancing toward the bay. The Skraeling flotilla has moved closer, but they're still keeping their distance, watching, waiting to see what the Norse will do. There's something almost respectful about their approach. They could attack now, while everyone's distracted with packing, but they're not. They're giving the Norse time to make the smart choice. You pause in your work, wiping sweat from your forehead despite the cold air. The sun is getting lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Weird to think this is probably the last sunset we'll see here, says Eric, one of the younger settlers. He's helping you with the iron, his arms full of unfinished axe heads. Maybe, you say, or maybe someone else will come back someday, try a different approach. You think that'll work better? You consider this as you heft a bundle of iron bars. I think it depends on what they're trying to accomplish. If they come to conquer, they'll probably run into the same problems we did. But if they come to trade, to learn, to find ways to coexist, you trail off, realizing you're describing something that doesn't really exist yet. A kind of interaction between peoples that goes beyond the usual patterns of war and conquest. Sounds complicated, Eric says. Yeah, but so is crossing an ocean, and we figured that out. The work continues as the sun sets, people moving with quiet efficiency through tasks they've done countless times before, breaking down a life, a settlement, a dream into portable pieces. Your body naturally relaxes into the rhythm. Bend, lift, carry. The repetitive motion is almost meditative. And gradually, as the evening progresses, you start to see the outline of the end. By full dark, most of the valuable materials have been moved to the beach. The longships, pulled up on shore 3 months ago, are being prepared for launching. Masts checked, rigging inspected, hulls examined for damage. The livestock are the trickiest part. Cattle don't naturally want to get into boats, especially at night, but there are techniques for this. Blindfolds to keep them calm, rope harnesses to control movement, careful coordination between multiple people to guide each animal aboard without anyone getting trampled. You end up helping with this, partly because you have experience with cattle, but mostly because every available hand is needed. The work is exhausting, but oddly soothing. Animals respond to calm confidence, and staying calm and confident requires a kind of deliberate relaxation. A yawn escapes as you help guide a particularly stubborn cow toward the boat ramp. Your muscles are tired in that good way that comes from useful physical labour. By midnight, the loading is essentially complete. 3 longships packed to capacity with people, animals, and everything worth taking from 5 months of work in Vinland. The buildings stand empty now, dark shapes against the starlit sky. In the morning, when the Skraelings come ashore to investigate, they'll find structures built in a foreign style, evidence of temporary occupation by people from across the ocean, but no people, no conflict, no blood. Just the quiet end of an experiment that was probably doomed from the start. You're sitting on the beach now, back against a pile of supplies, waiting for the order to launch. The night is clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead, the kind of sky you get in northern latitudes when the air is clean and the light pollution is exactly zero. Other people are scattered along the beach in similar positions, resting while they can, because the sail back to Greenland will be demanding. Not as dangerous as the original voyage, you know the route now, know the hazards, but still a test of seamanship and endurance. Your breathing settles into a slow, steady rhythm as you look up at the stars, the same constellations your people have used for navigation for generations. Polaris, the steady point around which everything else turns, the Great Bear wheeling through its eternal circuit. Familiar patterns in an unfamiliar sky. Peaceful night for the end of the world, Bjarni observes. He's settled a few feet away, also looking up. Not the end, you say, just the end of this part. Think we'll be back? Someone will. Maybe not us, maybe not soon, but someone. You can hear the gentle sound of waves against the beach, the creak of rigging as the loaded ships settle on their hulls, the occasional lowing of cattle adjusting to their new surroundings. Normal sounds, comforting sounds. But underneath it all, you can sense the presence of the skrailing flotilla still waiting beyond the bay mouth, patient as the tide. I wonder what they'll make of the buildings, Bjarni says. This is an interesting question. The longhouses and workshops represent technologies the Skraelings haven't seen before. Ironworking techniques, carpentry methods, agricultural approaches. Will they see these as useful innovations to be adopted or as contamination from an alien culture? Probably depends on how angry they are, you say. Fair point. Your eyelids are getting heavy now, the combination of exhaustion and the late hour, but also something else, a sense of completion. The settlement phase of this adventure is over. What comes next? The voyage home, the stories that will be told, the lessons that will be learned. That's all in the future. Right now, there's just this moment of quiet waiting. Around 3 a.m, Thorfinn gives the order, time to go. The ships slide down the beach and into the dark water with familiar scraping sounds. Oars bite into the bay, finding their rhythm. Slowly, carefully, the 3 vessels move toward the mouth of the harbour. You're in the second ship helping with the oars. The motion is automatic after months of practice. Pull, feather, reach, catch. Pull, feather, reach, catch. Soothing in its regularity. As you clear the inner bay and move toward open water, you can see the Skrailing flotilla off to your left. Still there, still watching, but they don't move to intercept, don't try to block your passage. They just watch as the Norse ships row past, heading for the open ocean. A few of the Skraelings raise paddles in what might be acknowledgement, or farewell, or good riddance. Hard to tell. The last thing you see of Vinland is the dark outline of the settlement against the pre-dawn sky. The buildings you helped construct, now empty and silent, and then you're in open water, setting sail for Greenland, and the whole experiment is over. Just like that. Your shoulders drop as the familiar tension of the oars gives way to the gentle emotion of sailing. The wind fills the square sail and the ship picks up speed, cutting through the dark water toward home. Behind you, Vinland disappears into the distance. Ahead, somewhere beyond the horizon, lies Greenland and the familiar challenges of life in an established settlement. But in between, there's this moment of transition, of being neither here nor there, suspended between 2 worlds on the dark ocean. You settle back against the gunwale, pulling your cloak tighter against the sea wind. The motion of the ship is rhythmic, hypnotic, the sound of water against the hull like a lullaby. Your breathing naturally slows to match the rhythm of the waves. Someone near the bow starts humming, an old song about sailing home. Others join in, creating a quiet harmony that mingles with the sound of wind and water. It's not a sad song exactly, more like contemplative, accepting. Some adventures end in triumph, others end in tragedy. This one ends in understanding. The understanding that the world is bigger and more complex than anyone imagined, that there are people across the Western Ocean who live differently, think differently, approach the land and sea from perspectives that never occurred to Europeans. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. Your eyelids flutter closed as the ship carries you through the darkness toward whatever comes next. The gentle rocking motion, the soft voices, the sense of being safely contained within the wooden hull, it all combines to create a profound feeling of peace. The first European settlement in North America is over, but the memory of it, the knowledge gained, the precedent set, that will last, that will matter. And someday, when other ships sail west across the Atlantic, when other Europeans encounter the peoples of the New World, maybe the lessons learned here will make the difference between understanding and conflict. Maybe. Your muscles completely relax as you drift in that pleasant space between waking and sleeping, carried by the ship toward home, surrounded by the quiet sounds of your people and the endless rhythm of the sea, breathing slowly and steadily as the stars wheel overhead, and the first pale light of dawn begins to touch the eastern horizon, bringing you safely away from one world and toward another. Your body settling deeper into rest as the story finds its natural pause. Here on the dark water between two continents, between past and future, between what was attempted and what was learned, the dawn comes slowly over the North Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of pearl and rose. You're still leaning against the gunwale, wrapped in your cloak, watching the sun climb out of the eastern horizon. The motion of the ship has settled into that perfect rhythm that makes you feel like you're being rocked in an enormous cradle. Behind you, Vinland is just a memory now, a dark line on the horizon that gets smaller with each passing hour. The wind is steady from the west, filling the sail and pushing the three ships toward Greenland at a good pace. With luck, you'll make the crossing in 4 or 5 days. Not bad for autumn sailing in the North Atlantic. You shift positions slightly, finding that sweet spot where your back fits perfectly against the curve of the hull. Better, much better. The funny thing is, now that you're sailing away from the settlement, you can see the whole experience more clearly, like stepping back from a painting to get the full picture. And the picture is complicated. On one hand, you failed. The settlement is abandoned. The dream of a permanent Norse presence in Vinland is over, at least for now. Thorfinn's expedition will go down in the sagas as another attempt that didn't quite work out. But on the other hand, you succeeded at something else entirely. You proved that the Western Ocean can be crossed, not just once, as a fluke, but repeatedly, reliably. Leif did it, Thorvald did it, Thorfinn did it. The route is known now, the techniques are established. More importantly, you proved that there are people on the other side, complex societies with their own technologies, their own ways of living off the land, their own ideas about territory and ownership. That changes everything, because now, when future explorers sail west, they'll know what they're getting into. They won't expect to find empty land waiting to be claimed. They'll come prepared for negotiation, for trade, for the delicate work of figuring out how different peoples can share the same space. Or at least they should. Your breathing naturally slows as you consider this. The rhythmic sound of water against the hull is almost hypnotic. The truth is, what happened in Vinland wasn't really about Vikings versus Skraelings. It was about two completely different approaches to living in the world, suddenly forced into contact. The Norse approach is territorial. You find a good spot, you claim it, you defend it. You build permanent structures, establish clear boundaries, create systems of ownership and inheritance. Land belongs to people. The Skraeling approach, from what you observed, is more fluid. They move through the landscape following seasonal patterns, using different areas at different times. They have territories, sure, but they're based on relationships and agreements, not fixed boundaries. People belong to land. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different, but they don't mix well. You pull your cloak tighter as a gust of wind cuts across the deck. The autumn air is getting colder as you sail north. By the time you reach Greenland, winter will be settling in for real. Thinking deep thoughts? The voice belongs to Gudrid, Thorfinn's wife. She settled nearby, also wrapped in wool against the wind. Her young son, Snorri, is sleeping in her lap, bundled so thoroughly that only his nose is visible. Just trying to make sense of it all, you say. She nods. It's a lot to process. Gudrid is one of the most interesting people on this expedition, not just because she's one of the few women, but because she has a broader perspective than most. She's travelled more widely than anyone else here: Iceland, Norway, Greenland, and now Vinland. She's seen how different societies work, how they adapt to different environments. "Do you think we'll be back?" you ask her. She considers this, rocking gently with the motion of the ship. Snorri makes a small sound in his sleep and she adjusts his blankets automatically. "Someone will," she says finally. "Maybe not us, maybe not soon, but the knowledge is out there now. People will be curious. And next time? Next time they'll be smarter, I hope." A comfortable silence settles between you. The ship continues its steady progress through the grey water, carrying you and 40-odd other people away from one life and toward another. The thing about Gudrid is that she understands something most of the men don't. This expedition wasn't just about establishing a settlement, it was about expanding the world. Before Leif's voyage, the known world ended at Greenland. Beyond that was just ocean, extending forever into mystery and myth. Now the world has edges on both sides, Greenland in the east, Vinland in the west, and between them a sea that can be crossed by anyone with the skill and courage to try. That's a fundamental change in how people think about geography, about possibility, about the future. Your shoulders naturally drop as you lean deeper into the curve of the hull. The sun is climbing higher now, taking some of the bite out of the wind. "Tell me about Iceland," you say. Gudrid smiles. "Missing solid ground already?" "Something like that." She shifts Snorri to a more comfortable position and settles in for a story. This is one of the things that makes long voyages bearable. People who can tell good stories. "Iceland's green," she says. "Greener than Greenland, that's for sure. Rolling hills covered with grass, rivers full of salmon, and the hot springs. You can bathe in water that comes right out of the ground, hot enough to cook an egg." You've heard about the hot springs before, but it's still hard to imagine. Water that's naturally warm, bubbling up from deep underground. In Greenland, you have to melt ice for every drop of water that isn't frozen solid. The people are different too, she continues. More settled. They've been there long enough to establish real farms, real communities. There's even a parliament where representatives from different regions meet to settle disputes. This is fascinating. The idea of resolving conflicts through talking rather than fighting is still relatively new among Norse peoples, but in Iceland, apparently, it's becoming standard practice. Think it works? Mostly. Oh, there are still feuds, still violence, but less than you'd see in Norway or Denmark. People have learned that in a place like Iceland, you can't afford to waste resources on unnecessary fighting. She pauses, looking out at the water. Maybe that's something we could have tried in Vinland, some kind of formal arrangement with the Skrælings, boundaries, agreements, ways to resolve disputes without resorting to weapons. You consider this. It's an intriguing idea, but it would have required a level of communication and mutual understanding that never quite developed. Hard to negotiate with people when you don't speak the same language, you observe. True. But trade worked for a while. We found ways to communicate about furs and cloth and milk. Maybe we could have found ways to communicate about land use, seasonal patterns, shared territories. A yawn escapes as you imagine this alternative history. Norse settlers and Skrælings working out formal agreements about who could use which areas when. Shared fishing grounds, trading posts, intermarriage, maybe. Think it's possible? You ask. I think it's necessary, she says. If we're going to keep exploring westward, we're going to keep encountering people who were there first. We need to get better at figuring out how to coexist. The conversation is interrupted by a call from the lookout. Land ho! You turn to look where he's pointing, and sure enough, there's a dark line on the northern horizon. Too early to be Greenland, but definitely land. Probably one of the islands off Labrador, Gudrid says. We're making good time. The sight of land, even distant land, changes the mood on the ship. People moving around more, checking gear, preparing for the possibility of putting ashore if the weather turns bad. But the weather holds steady. Clear skies, steady wind, good visibility, perfect sailing conditions for this time of year. Your body naturally relaxes as you settle back against the gunwale. The combination of sun and wind and the rhythmic motion of the ship is incredibly soothing. As the day progresses, you find yourself thinking about the broader implications of what just happened in Vinland, because this wasn't just one failed settlement. This was part of a larger pattern of Norse expansion that had been going on for centuries. First, they spread through the fjords and islands of Norway and Denmark. Then they pushed west to the Shetlands, the Orkneys, Iceland. Each time they were looking for new land, new opportunities, new places to establish themselves. But each time they were also encountering peoples who were already there. Picts in Scotland, Celtic monks in Iceland, and now Skraelings in Vinland. The difference is that in most of those earlier expansions, the Norse had advantages that made conquest possible. Better weapons, better ships, larger populations back home to provide reinforcements. In Vinland, those advantages didn't exist. The Skraelings had their own technologies, their own ways of fighting, their own understanding of the land, and they vastly outnumbered the Norse. More importantly, they were defending their home territory. That changes the calculation completely. You stretch slightly, adjusting your position to catch more of the afternoon sun. The warmth feels good on your face. The other factor, and this is something people don't talk about much, but you can feel it in the changing weather patterns, is that the climate is starting to shift. This medieval warm period that made the North Atlantic crossings possible, it's not going to last forever. Already, some of the older sailors are talking about harder winters, more storms, ice forming earlier and melting later. Subtle changes, but noticeable if you spend your life watching weather patterns. If the climate gets colder, if ice starts blocking the sea routes more often, then the whole enterprise of maintaining settlements across the Western Ocean becomes much more difficult. Maybe impossible. That might be the real reason why Vinland was abandoned. Not just because of conflict with the Skraelings, but because the window of opportunity for North Atlantic exploration is starting to close. A comfortable sigh escapes as you consider this longer view of history. The Vikings caught a brief moment when the climate was warm enough and the sailing technology was good enough to make these incredible voyages possible, but moments don't last forever. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the point wasn't to establish permanent colonies. Maybe the point was to push the boundaries of the known world, to prove that the ocean could be crossed, to make contact with peoples who lived completely different lives. Maybe the point was the journey itself. The ship hits a larger wave and you feel the familiar lift and settle that comes with deep water sailing. The motion is soothing, rhythmic, like being rocked to sleep. But you're not sleeping, you're just comfortable, relaxed, watching the afternoon light play on the water and thinking about the strange turns that history takes. By evening, the wind has shifted slightly, requiring some adjustment to the sail and rigging. You help with this work, enjoying the familiar tasks of shipboard life, hauling rope, adjusting lines, checking that everything is secure. There's something deeply satisfying about this kind of work. Simple, immediate problems with clear solutions. Pull this rope to tighten that sail. Tie this knot to secure that line. Very different from the complex negotiations and cultural misunderstandings that dominated life in Vinland. As the sun sets, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, you find yourself back at your favourite spot against the gunwale. The wind has died down and the air is milder. Perfect evening for being on the water. Other people are scattered around the deck in similar positions. Some telling stories, others just enjoying the peace of a successful day's sailing. Children playing quiet games. Adults sharing food and drink. The sounds are comforting, familiar voices, familiar languages, familiar jokes and conversations. After months of being surrounded by the strange and unfamiliar, there's something deeply restful about being back among your own people. Your breathing settles into that slow, steady rhythm that comes with true relaxation. The motion of the ship, the sound of water against the hull, the quiet conversations around you, it all blends into a kind of maritime lullaby. Tomorrow, you'll reach the outer islands of Greenland. The day after that, with luck, you'll be home. But tonight, you're suspended between worlds, between the adventure you're leaving behind and the familiar life you're returning to, between what was attempted and what was learned, between the old world and the new. You shift a bit, getting more comfortable against the smooth wood of the hull, your muscles naturally releasing the last bit of tension as the ship carries you steadily through the darkening water toward whatever comes next, your body settling deeper into that perfect state of relaxed alertness, breathing easily and naturally as the first stars begin to appear overhead and the gentle rhythm of the waves continues its ancient song, carrying you safely homeward through the peaceful night. The stars are brilliant now, scattered across the dark sky like silver coins on black velvet. You're still lying against the gunwale, wrapped in your cloak, feeling the gentle motion of the ship as it carries you through the calm night toward Greenland. Your breathing has settled into that deep, peaceful rhythm that comes with being completely relaxed, in and out, slow and steady, like the rhythm of the waves against the hull. Around you, the ship has grown quiet. Most people are sleeping now, curled up in whatever sheltered spots they can find. The sound of gentle snoring mingles with the soft splash of water and the occasional creak of timber. You should probably find a more sheltered place to sleep. But there's something perfect about this spot, this position, this moment of being suspended between sea and sky. Your eyelids are getting heavy now. The combination of the long day, the steady motion of the ship, and the deep sense of peace that comes with being safely homeward bound. Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up in sight of Greenland, the familiar ice-covered peaks, the protected fjords, where the Norse settlements cling to the edges of a harsh but manageable land. You'll tell your stories then, about the settlement, about the Skraelings, about what it feels like to stand on the shores of a new continent and realise you're part of something that will be remembered for centuries. But tonight there's just this perfect moment of rest. The ship rises and falls gently with the swells, up and down, like being rocked in an enormous cradle by the sea itself. Your muscles are completely relaxed now. Your shoulders have dropped, your arms lie heavy and still at your sides. Even your face feels soft, peaceful, all the tension melting away. As you drift in that pleasant space between waking and sleeping, your mind wanders over everything that's happened. The excitement of first landing in Vinland, the careful work of building the settlement, the wonder of meeting people who lived so differently from anything you'd ever imagined. The gradual realization that some dreams are bigger than the people who dream them, but also the understanding that every attempt, even the ones that don't quite work out, teaches you something valuable, something that makes the next attempt more likely to succeed. Your breathing grows deeper, slower, each breath carrying you further into that state of perfect relaxation. The Vikings will come back to North America eventually. Not tomorrow, not next year, but someday. And when they do, they'll remember the lessons learned here about communication, about cooperation, about the difference between taking land and sharing it. Or maybe it won't be Vikings at all. Maybe it will be other Europeans, generations from now, sailing west with different intentions and better understanding. The important thing is that the connection has been made, the ocean has been crossed, the knowledge exists. Your eyelids flutter closed now, then open again, heavy with sleep. The stars seem softer somehow, blurred at the edges. Around you, the ship continues its steady progress through the dark water. The familiar sounds of a Norse vessel at sea, timber creaking, rigging humming in the wind, water rushing along the hull. Sounds that speak of home, of safety, of being surrounded by people who understand you and share your ways of seeing the world. You shift slightly, finding an even more comfortable position. The wool of your cloak is soft against your skin. The curved wood of the hull supports your back perfectly. Your breathing slows even more. Deep, peaceful breaths that carry away the last traces of tension. In your drowsy mind, you can see the larger pattern now. This expedition to Vinland was part of something bigger, part of humanity's endless push to explore, to discover, to understand what lies beyond the next horizon. The Vikings were just one chapter in that story, but what a chapter! These farmers and traders from the cold edges of Europe somehow found the courage and skill to sail across unknown oceans, to build homes in impossible places, to survive winters that would have killed their ancestors. And now, having pushed as far west as anyone had ever gone, they're sailing home with stories that will reshape how people think about the world. Your eyelids are so heavy now they can barely stay open. The gentle motion of the ship rocks you deeper and deeper into that perfect state of relaxation. Sleep is coming now, real sleep, deep, peaceful, restorative sleep. But as you drift toward unconsciousness, you feel a strange shift. The sounds of the ship seem to be fading, the motion becoming gentler, the stars overhead growing dimmer. It's as if the longship is slowly dissolving around you, carrying you not just across the ocean, but across time itself. The rough wool of your Viking cloak transforms gradually into the soft cotton of modern fabric. The hard wood of the gunwale becomes the gentle support of your own pillow. The salt tang of sea air gives way to the familiar sense of your own room. Clean sheets. Perhaps a hint of lavender, the subtle comfort of home. You're still moving, but differently now, not the roll and pitch of a ship on the ocean, but the gentle settling of your own body into your own bed, your familiar, comfortable, perfectly safe bed. The stars are still there, but they're outside your window now. Distant points of light in a peaceful night sky, watching over you as you make the transition from the harsh world of 1,000 years ago to the warmth and safety of the present. Your breathing continues its slow, steady rhythm, but now each breath carries you further away from the Viking world and deeper into your own peaceful rest. The sounds of the longship fade completely now. No more creaking timber or rushing water, just the gentle quiet of a modern night, perhaps the soft whisper of air conditioning, the distant hum of civilization keeping you safe and comfortable. Your muscles sink even deeper into relaxation, every part of your body heavy and still and perfectly at peace. Gone are the sheepskins and rough wool. Now you're surrounded by the luxury of a real mattress, real pillows, real blankets designed for nothing but comfort. Gone is the uncertainty of survival in a harsh new land. Now you're in a world of abundance and safety, where water comes from taps and heat comes from thermostats and food is as close as the nearest store. Your eyelids close completely now, no longer struggling to stay open. The transition is complete. You're home. But you carry with you the memory of that incredible journey, the courage of people who sailed into the unknown, the resilience needed to build a life in impossible places, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to withdraw. Most of all, you carry the understanding that human beings are capable of extraordinary things, that barriers which seem impossible can be overcome, that the world is always bigger and more complex and more wonderful than we imagine. Your breathing grows slower still, deeper, more peaceful. The bed beneath you feels incredibly soft now, softer than anything those Viking settlers could have imagined. Your head sinks into the pillow like it was designed specifically for you. The blankets around you are warm without being heavy, the perfect temperature, the perfect weight, everything adjusted for your complete comfort. You can feel sleep taking hold now, real sleep, the kind that carries you away completely, leaving behind all the concerns and tensions of the day. Your body grows heavier with each breath, your mind quieter, the last conscious thoughts drifting away like mist. There's nothing you need to do now except rest, nothing you need to think about except how comfortable and safe and peaceful you feel. The story of the Vikings in Vinland is complete. Their ships have carried them safely home. Their courage has been tested and proven. Their journey has expanded the boundaries of the known world. And now your own journey carries you into sleep, deep, dreamless, restorative sleep. Your breathing becomes so slow and quiet now that it's barely perceptible. Your heartbeat steady and calm. Every muscle in your body completely relaxed. The warmth of your bed surrounds you like a gentle embrace. The softness cradles you perfectly. The darkness behind your closed eyelids is complete and soothing. Deeper now, floating gently down into that peaceful place where sleep lives, where the body repairs itself and the mind finds rest. Nothing disturbing this perfect peace, nothing to worry about or think about or plan for, just sleep, beautiful, deep, peaceful sleep. Your breathing grows even slower, even deeper, each breath carrying you further into that wonderful state of complete rest. The modern world fades away now just as the Viking world faded before it. No more thoughts, no more concerns, no more awareness of anything except the gentle rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Sleep is here now, surrounding you, embracing you, carrying you away to that place of perfect rest and healing, deeper and deeper, more and more peaceful, more and more relaxed, until there's nothing left except the soft rhythm of sleeping breath, the gentle warmth of your bed, the deep, peaceful darkness of perfect sleep. Sleep now, complete, restful, healing sleep. Nothing to do except rest, nothing to think about except how peaceful you feel. Just sleep, deep, beautiful sleep. Floating gently in that perfect space where everything is quiet and safe and still, deeper with each breath, more peaceful with each heartbeat. Sleep,